In a small roadside diner, where engines roared louder than hearts beat, a man wearing the infamous patch of the Hell's Angel sat at the counter every morning. He was the kind of man no one dared to cross, tattooed arms, a stare like steel, and silence that spoke volumes. But one morning, as he reached for his coffee, he noticed something that froze him mid-motion, a trembling cook, trying to smile through bruised lips. That single moment set off a chain of events that would change both their lives forever, and reveal a side of the biker world no one saw coming. The Redbird Diner stood just off Route 14, where the desert stretched for miles and the air smelled of oil, dust, and burnt coffee. Every morning, the same crowd rolled in, truckers, locals, and bikers from the nearby chapter of the Hells Angels. Among them was Ryder Kane, a man with a reputation carved out of fire and fear. He wasn't the loudest in the group, but everyone knew better than to test the calmest storm. Ryder always sat at the corner stool, black leather vest draped over his shoulders, rings clinking against the coffee mug. The waitress, Sandy, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a kind smile, usually served him without a word. But that morning, someone else was behind the counter, a young woman, no older than 24, wearing a faded red apron and a nervous half-smile. Her name was Lila. She moved with hesitation, like every step had to be carefully measured. When Ryder ordered his usual, black coffee, eggs, and toast, she nodded quickly and turned away, avoiding his gaze. But as she walked, Ryder noticed something, the faintest bruise on the corner of her lip. Purple, swollen, and trying to hide beneath cheap foundation. He said nothing at first. The next few days, he kept watching. Every time she smiled, there was something behind it, fear. He noticed how she jumped at loud voices, how she flinched when a man brushed past her too quickly, how her hands shook while pouring coffee. It wasn't just one bruise anymore. There were faint marks on her wrist too, like someone had grabbed her too hard. Ryder wasn't the kind of man to care about much outside his club. But something about that girl pulled at the one part of him he thought had died long ago, compassion. One night, after a long ride with his brothers, he stopped by the diner close to closing time. Only Lila was there, cleaning the counter. She froze when she saw him. "You shouldn't be here this late," Ryder said quietly. "I could say the same about you," she replied, her voice trembling. He leaned on the counter. "You got someone waiting for you at home?" Her eyes darted away. "Yeah, my boyfriend." Ryder's jaw tightened. "Boyfriend hit you?" She looked at him then, really looked at him. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she didn't answer. She didn't need to. Silence told the truth. Ryder exhaled slowly and nodded. Thought so. When he left, he didn't say another word. But the next morning, the Hells Angels rolled into the diner in full force. Ryder sat at his usual spot, and when Lila brought his plate, he noticed her lip had split open again, fresh. His knuckles turned white. After breakfast, he stood up, tossed a 50 on the counter, and said, "What time you off tonight?" She hesitated. 10. "Good. I'll walk you home." She shook her head in panic. "No, please, you don't understand." But Ryder wasn't asking. He just said, "See you at 10, and walked out. That night, she tried to leave early, but he was already there, leaning against his Harley, cigarette in hand, waiting beneath the flickering streetlight. She begged him to go. "You'll make it worse," she whispered. He looked at her and said something that made her heart stop. "Nothing gets worse when I'm around." When they reached her rundown apartment, a tall man with a beer bottle in hand stormed out. "Where the hell you been?" he barked. Then he saw Ryder, and the rage in his eyes turned to fear. "Who's this?" the man stammered. Ryder didn't speak. He walked straight up to him and stood inches from his face. "You touch her again," he said, voice low and cold, "and I'll show you what real pain feels like." The man laughed nervously. "You think you can tell me?" Ryder's fist met his jaw before the sentence finished. The man dropped like a rag doll. Ryder looked down at him and said, "That's your warning." When he turned to Lila, she was crying, not from fear, but relief. For the first time in months, she wasn't alone. The next morning, word spread fast. Everyone in town heard that a Hell's Angel had knocked out Lila's boyfriend. People whispered about it like it was some kind of myth. Lila expected trouble, maybe her ex would come back, or the cops would show up. But instead, something unexpected happened. Ryder started coming to the diner every evening, not as a customer, but as a silent guardian. He'd sit by the window, watching until she finished her shift. Sometimes he'd walk her home. Other times, he'd just make sure no one bothered her. He never crossed lines. Never tried to flirt. Never asked for anything. He just made sure she was safe. One night, as she wiped tables, she asked, "Why do you care? You don't even know me." Ryder looked up from his coffee. "You remind me of my sister," he said quietly. She didn't make it out. Lila froze. He took a slow sip of coffee before adding, "She was with a man like yours. I wasn't there to protect her. Not again." That night, Lila cried behind the counter, realizing that beneath the tattoos and the leather was a man carrying his own scars. Weeks passed. Lila began to heal, inside and out. The bruises faded, the fear softened, and the light in her eyes started to return. She laughed again,